The panel object allows us to encapsulate functionality through the use of components, just like web panels with web components. Let's see an example of their use. To build a panel object that will show the attractions and data of a selected country, but this time the information will be deployed using a component within the panel that's created. To create the panel that will contain the component, we'll do a save as of attractions CF panel and call it attractions country info CF panel. We insert a component control from the toolbox to the right of the attractions grid. Just as we did before, when we click on the name of a country in the grid, we'll be opening the information about that country. Now, we'll create the panel that will be associated to the component. Its name will be View Country Cities. We drag the country name attribute from the toolbar and a grid with the city name attribute. To the grid, assign its base transaction in country.city and then we add a parm with the country ID attribute. If we check the panel's navigation list, in the level detail node, we'll see that the country table, filtered by the country ID attribute of the parm rule, will be run over. So one single record corresponding to the country received by parameter will be retrieved. In the level detail grid 1 node, we can see that the grid runs over the country city table, which was also filtered by the country ID received by parameter. Now, in the properties of component 1, in object, we select the View Country Cities panel, and in parameters, add the country identifier variable. This variable will save the value of the country ID attribute of the row in the selected grid. One difference we'll see here in relation to web panels is that here, we will not need to change the type of the View Country Cities CF panel for it to be a component, because when we insert a component control, we may choose to insert any of the panels created before. And now we have to invoke the component panel when we click on the country name in the attractions grid. So, we program the tap event of the country name attribute with the invocation. Firstly, we save the country ID corresponding to the country name selected in the country identifier variable that we defined previously. And then, we dynamically create the View Country Cities CF panel object associated to component 1, using the create command and passing the country selected by parameter. Since the panel we're building is already main, we'll execute it with run. We click on country China, and we can see that China's cities are shown: Beijing, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. The panel objects we insert as components inside another panel include the same events that they had as a panel. That is to say, the system events on the client side, client start and back, and the events on the server side, start, refresh, and load. This means that we must consider the order in which events will be triggered from the component or components that we have in the panel, in relation to the events of the host panel. The first events to be triggered are those in the panel that contain the components, in the usual order seen before. That is, client start, start, refresh, and load. Then, from top to bottom, and from left to right, the events of each panel included as component also in the usual order. Now let's see what the master panel object is about. If we look at the properties of panel object attraction CF panel, we can see that one of them is the master panel property, which appears empty in the panel. There's an indication there of the master page that will contain the panel object and where it'll be loaded. This concept is analogous to the concept of web master panel shown for web panels. However, unlike the latter, a panel object does not have a property for changing types. Here, the master panel object is an object independent from the panel object. Now, we'll create an object of the master panel type with the name master panel CF. If we go to the toolbar, we can see that we have available a container control, content placeholder, where panel objects will be loaded. Now, we insert the content placeholder in the web panel, then insert a table above it, and an image with the agency's logo inside the table, with a table to the right to aid us in keeping the logo aligned on the left. We adjust the table's properties and the properties of the main table to view the image well. We'll also create class ImageHeader CF and assign to it the scale type property with value fit, and assign that class to the logo image, and then save. Now, we assign the master panel property to the panels Attractions CF panel and Attraction Detail CF panel with the master panel CF object that we've just created. And we execute. We can see that the agency's logo appears with the Attractions CF panel loaded below it. If we click on Details of Country France, we'll note that the Attractions Detail panel has the same logo. This time, we won't consider the particulars of the design system for the master panel object, but something we can say in advance is that the theme object and the classes are used in a way similar to use of web panels. The design issued will be part of an upcoming video.